We have a range of matters to consider today which are of particular interest to members of the public across the region. As members have been advised, an extra item of business, a notional motion, will be considered today, and the motion and accompanying report have already been circulated to members this morning. I've taken the view that the changes brought about by the rollout of universal credit are so significant that I have agreed to take this notice of motion as a late and urgent item. I intend to deal with reports in an appropriate manner, and I look forward to a constructive debate. May I remind members and members of the public that the meeting will be recorded and the recording will be made public. And can I also make mention of the fact that Councillor Patsy Gilroy resigned with immediate effect last Monday. Patsy was first elected to Dumfries and Galloway Council, I think, in 1999, so she has had a considerable number of years of service, during which time she has held a number of offices, including convener of the council. I understand her resignation was because she hopes to take up a new role, and therefore I would thank her for all her efforts during her time as a councillor and wish her well in her new role. Rona, can you provide the Sederunt and any apologies, please?
Can I just say a few words in regards to support in what you've said there, and I wonder if you could just recognise that within a minute. Patsy was here for nearly 20 years. She did a fantastic job. She's sat in your seat on 2 or 3 occasions, and she's been really good representing her constituents. So I just think if we can recognise that within a minute as well, just to thank her for all her hard work previously done, would be very much appreciated. Thank you.
That would be appropriate to minute our thanks to Patsy for her years of service. Okay, Rona, can you provide the Sederunt and apologies?
We have apologies from Councillor Ferguson. As we start the meeting, Councillors Bell and Sloan are not present.
Leader, I can confirm that Councillor Bell is definitely an apology today. I thought you'd put them in.
Thanks. Do any members have a declaration of interest they want to make? Okay, we proceed to item 2 in that case. Item 2 deals with, in procedural terms, the mechanics of the requisition submitted in accordance with Standing Order 6.6 and requiring that this special meeting of Council be held to deal with the business set out in the agenda. Members will observe that the requisition includes a signature of former Councillor Gilroy. However, there remain 15 signatures of current members, which is over 1/4 of the elected members. Are there any questions on the requisition before we go forward? No? Okay. Are members happy to note the recommendation set out in the report? Okay, item 3. This is a report from the Acting Director of Children, Young People and Lifelong Learning, providing an update for members as requested on the requisition submitted in calling the special meeting. Before we consider the terms of the report, can we first agree to withdraw delegation from the Children, Young People and Lifelong Learning Committee? Agreed? Agreed. Okay. Before we start, I'd like to pay tribute to the Council and school staff who have worked extremely hard and performed an excellent job in very difficult circumstances. I know a number of staff had to cancel annual leave this week and the previous week in connection with the requisitioning of the former Max High School, and I'd really like to put that on record that we do appreciate the hard work that staff, both school, teaching, non-teaching and council staff have had to put in over this very difficult period. Can I invite the Acting Director to add anything further to the update on the report?
Thank you, Leader. There's nothing further to add to the report, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Invite questions from members. Councillor Crothers?
It's probably not so much questions, just to kind of outline, I suppose, the reasons we actually requested this to be here. Maybe some questions will come off the back of that, Leader, if that's okay. Okay to go forward in that particular course. I mean, ultimately, on the 9th of October, we're all acutely aware of what's been happening in the background with the North West Community Campus, but on the 9th of October, the evening, there was a parent forum, I think it was, meeting, and a number of elected representatives turned up to that meeting. It was good, it was well handled. Probably like yourself, Leader, as well, I'd like to thank the staff in regards to the staff for time. We think we have put in a very difficult position, but they're coping with very well, and all the hard work they're putting in there clearly is well respected and appreciated by certainly by I would say all the members of the council, but everybody can speak for themselves. But so there was some at that meeting. It was well handled by the staff, by the I don't think she was parent council. I think it was maybe parent forum. Like the chair of that particular meeting was well handled. A lot of issues came up, and so the picture that we perceived to be happening up there was slightly different on the ground when we heard from the actual people who it was directly affecting. So in the back of that, the Conservative group got together and we decided we felt it was important. At least the council may well be recognised. We weren't exactly sure what, through the scheme of delegation what was happening through the administration, but we thought it was important that we at least should pick this up and make sure that it is being dealt with by the council through its official routes, being its committee structure. So that's why we called in particular for this to come forward. So taking into consideration some of the points that we had, and maybe this will come out through debate, but some of them have already been addressed in regards to the points that were raised on the night. So again, thanks to our staff, they've took the lead, they've went forward, they've taken into consideration these very important points, and they've addressed a number of them, but there's maybe 2 or 3 we still need to be answered, like the hot meals, like the questions being asked on the night, likes of we're so far behind now, how on earth do we catch up? So this was all about the contingency plan that was put into place and how we can actually bring the people of the Northwest, the Northwest Community Campus, for all the students that are there. The parents raised clearly one of the biggest facts that they raised was we need back together. They feel as if they're being isolated, almost like a conquering divide. So how can we actually bring us all back together in the shortest possible time to make them feel like that community/family unit again in order to take things forward? So, I mean, so again, just kind of going back to initial points, I think thanks very much to the whole council for allowing us to come to move a delegation, to allow this to be debated. I think quite a number of us will have comments in regards to how we feel this is progressing and what further things we maybe need, but it's all for the right reasons, Leader. This is absolutely for the right reasons. This is to make sure that the people who are at this campus in these unfortunate circumstances are being best served, and the council, at our level, the council is absolutely aware of this, and we're doing everything we possibly can to address it. So there's many comments, but I mean, there are a couple of throwing questions, maybe just to get things started. It was about how a progress update, maybe it's, some of this is obviously contained within the report and we've read it, but how it's all coming together, so we're getting back onto a single site. Actually, the hot meals, how does our... so hot meals was mentioned in the night. It said, listen, we're not even getting a hot meal now, or some days and not others. So there's questions like that, and some of the parents were raising concerns about, listen, we're so far behind now, we'll never catch up, especially in S4, 5 and 6, where they're looking to actually take the higher grades or whatever it may be, they're actually undertaken. So I think there's a couple just to get started. So how, as far as the contingency plan as it is and as it's been amended since Friday the 9th of October, there's been a new almost like implementation stage to that. How is it amended and be flexible enough to actually meet the local needs aspirations of that community, Leader?
Thanks, Councillor Crothers. Could we draw your attention to 3.2.4? This was not the parent council. The parent group was established through the social media and invited the acting director, operations manager and head teacher. Unfortunately, did not invite any member of the administration to that meeting. Had I been invited, I'm sure I would have made every effort to attend, but for some reason, administration members were not even the local councillors were invited to that meeting, which was a little strange, but there you go. However, that doesn't mean to say that there had been no communications with people involved with NWCC. The chair of the SIPL committee, the council's young people's champion, and I visited the decant arrangements at St Ninian's, Lochside and Dumfries High School on the invitation of members of the EIS union on the Thursday before the October holiday, and we spoke at that time with staff, both teaching and non-teaching, and with pupils about their experiences, and we were very concerned at that meeting as to the quality of education going forward, because as far as we're concerned, the important factor in all of this is the young people and their education. The Deputy Leader, the Chair of SIPL, Councillor Nicholson and I also visited Maxwellton High School last Friday, where we had a walk around the school to observe the work being undertaken to make the premises suitable for occupation after the school holidays. And again, we were very impressed with the efforts that members of council staff were putting in to try and make that happen. I'll ask Gillian if she wishes to give you some more assurance on the points that you raised.
Thank you, Leader. And for the questions, in terms of the hot meal provision, as soon as we became aware of some of the concerns from parents, we can act. I think we were not aware that there were limited choices in the primary menu options. That's now been rectified. In the main, you make mention of young people being behind in their studies. That does seem to refer mainly to the senior phase, and certainly S4, S5 and S6 have been our prime concern. There have been some concerns in some subjects, predominantly around the amount of homework, pace and challenge of homework. And again, there was mixed views. Some families and some staff felt that the disruption to learning and teaching had been considerable and therefore homework was an added burden, whereas others felt that homework needed to be given an added priority during this time of disruption. So homework will be back on track as from the beginning of session, and all study options, drop-in sessions, study support online and face-to-face have been put in place, and there's a pupil focus group has been established in order to find out the best ways that this should be delivered. The Maxwellton High School recommissioning is going very well, and over the course of this week, principal teachers in the first instance and then all staff will be given the opportunity to come in and refamiliarise themselves with the building, ready to hit the ground running with young people and families at the beginning of the week.
Further questions? Councillor Hislop.
Thank you, Leader. I note here that the S4 to S6 would be staged as furniture and resources will be required. That was one of the sort of big issues that was brought up on the evening, was the fact that practical classes weren't able to be done because of the moving about, etc. And a lot of it was now theory rather than the practical. When will we actually be able to say you can go back in and do practical for your exams as well as the theory?
My understanding was that affected the S1 to S3 pupils most significantly, the ones who were in Knockside School, because there was no facility there for them to do any practical work. But again, can reassure you on that.
Thank you. Indeed, the S1 to S3 had no practical provision, and that was a main concern. But with the recommissioning of Maxwellton High School, we now have practical facilities for all pupils for S4 to S6 as well. So all young people will be coming back onto the Maxwellton High School site. The reason that I was less than concrete in my paper regarding the date of the S4 to S6 is coming back in, we weren't exactly sure in terms of their own class work what would be the least disruptive to their learning, but it's certainly, the building is ready, and once I've spoken with all the staff on Friday and Monday, we'll be able to determine the best transition back into the building.
Okay. Councillor Fairbairn.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Yeah, I'd like to pay tribute to the Education Department for the quick work they've done in the event of the disasters we had that unfolded in front of our very eyes. Going back to what the Leader said just earlier on there about the meeting at St Ninian's, that was a public meeting. You could have went along, it was public knowledge. So, anybody could have just turned up at that and put their point forward and spoke to the community, which they want you to do anyway. And it's still a big issue with them. I had emails on Friday saying that communication is still very poor with them. So we need to tighten that up. And could we be guaranteed that the kids will be back into school for next Monday? Is that a kind of concrete guarantee?
All children will be going back to their base, because I was aware of some issues with communication. I certainly didn't want to change the plans over the holidays, because it may be that some people would not have got the message. So all children will be going back to their existing arrangements on Monday morning, and then will be guided exactly what to do from that point.
May I reassure you, Councillor Fairbairn, that I have actually contacted the chair of the Parent Council to offer meetings with myself and the Deputy Leader, or indeed the chair of SIPL or the Vice Chair of SIPL, should parents feel that that is necessary. If you say it's a public meeting, it wasn't advertised anywhere I saw. Any further Councillor Nicholson?
Yeah, it's just on that point, just to clarify things, there was no invite to the meeting. The meeting was for parents and officers at first, then went on to Facebook as far as I know after that, and I wasn't invited, or other members weren't invited to that meeting, so it wasn't a public meeting as such. I had a meeting with the Community Council where the Senga and some other parents came to that Community Council, and they then apologised to me regarding that. The statements from Councillor Fairbairn, and especially in the press, are absolutely shameful. I think, that everyone knows this crocodile tears about the campus and that, from the Tories. The Tories didn't want a campus, and people know that up there. People have been phoning me up and saying what a ridiculous statement that was in the paper, and and as I said, I got an apology, and I said that's absolutely no problem at all. The councillors, rather than standing with their arms folded outside the North West Community Campus, were actually getting on with the job, actually getting on. They understood the difficulties within that campus. I was at the campus 3 times. I've emailed, spoken to Gavin, Gillian, Colin Grant, Claire Renton. We've had numerous communications regarding issues and how we're going to sort that out. As I said, the 3 visits to the North West Community Campus, we visited Marks High, we met parents. So we're not just standing about doing nothing. I think Councillor Fairbairn needs to look at his own record in council. I think that, since he's been a councillor, I know it's not long, I know it's just a couple of years, I think it is, since the 23rd of November, Doug, was it? 2016. And Councillor Fairbairn's missed 32% of the meetings, 32% of the meetings in council. Now, I think if he's doing some, if he's wanting to, get his, I think if he wants to get people on his side.
Leader.
Yeah, but it's a matter of public record. It's a matter.
Leader, point of order.
It is a matter of public record. Councillor Fairbairn made statements. Councillor Fairbairn at the very start.
Point of order, Leader.
Councillor Fairbairn made statements at the very start of this regarding the councillors. So I think, but notwithstanding that, I think the important thing here is that, it's not about councillors, it's not about, how people react in the press to things, it's about actually what they matter to do. It's the kids, it's the parents that matter here. And, I've set up meetings with them, and we're going forward in a very positive way. And can I say that some of that doesn't help matters, it doesn't help the kids at all. It's their education that matters and how we're going to get through that. And I've been very pleased up North West, the Moxwatton High School, regarding the progress that's been made and the facilities and the structures that's in place to help that happen.
Councillor Wilson, followed by Councillor Maitland and Councillor Karen Carruthers.
Thanks, Leader. I think that Councillor Nicholson has made a significant number of points. There are a couple of things I want to touch on. I think, first of all, we're very quick to sort of jump on there's been homework or there's been no homework or there's something else. I remember a teacher saying to me that homework makes not one blind but a difference to whether you're going to pass an exam or not. I think what is important is that when myself and yourself and the chair of SIPLAX went around and spoke to the kids and spoke to the teachers and listened to their concerns, and I asked them questions along the lines of, where are you at your courses now? Where should you be? And are you there? And in most cases, kids who are sitting examinable courses are at the place where they should be now. We then had a discussion with them about what type of extra support that SIPL committee asked for. I helped give them some ideas on what they could get, and some of them were very up for that, and I think that it's important that we see that is done. I think the last time this was discussed at full council or at SIPL, there was a question of leadership. That was a question of leadership from the administration. I actually think that leadership is going and speaking to the staff, speaking to the pupils, speaking to parents offline, and actually taking action. There were some things that I heard from pupils and from teachers that were absolutely terrible. And instead of standing on the front page of the paper, I, along with yourself, went along and actually found solutions, looked to see what we can do differently, because there were things that we weren't happy about, but we went and we listened and we asked questions and we took action. And that is what leadership is about, and that is what we as a council have done. And I think that it's important that the work of teachers and of staff and of non-teaching staff are put on record, because I actually saw them, the teachers that we were speaking to, as absolute heroes. Even stuck in what looked like a cupboard was a member of our staff, absolutely happy as Larry, doing absolute damnedest for the kids that were being taught. And it was just absolutely remarkable to see that there was absolutely no negativity. Very much criticised what was wrong to us and said exactly what needed to change, but getting on with the job and doing the best by the peoples. And that's what we here must do now, is do the best by the peoples. And I believe that the actions that we've taken do that.
Councillor Maitland.
Thank you, Leader. Well, if I can possibly broaden this out slightly, I lead a group of members from out with Dumfries who actually look with some very quiet envy, I think, at the beautiful new facilities which have been built. And I really don't want in any shape or form to take away from what, after this blip, because it's a most unfortunate and unpleasant blip, but nevertheless, these facilities exist, and I don't want to take away in any shape or form the confidence that the people of North West Dumfries should have in these facilities which are coming their way. And I look forward to that happening very soon, and I really want to tell them that they've got something which is to be envied, actually, by those of us who don't have new facilities. I would like very specifically, however, to ask the question about Max High, about where corporately that money is going to come from in order to refurbish that. It's not entirely clear in the report, please.
Thank you. Wise words, Councillor Maitland. Gillian, would you answer that?
At the current time, I don't have a budget line identified, Leader, but it is important that this work takes place. We have the contingency for the young people's learning at heart, and we will work with my colleagues in the senior leadership team to establish that.
There are two separate elements to where we want to go. There is what we do because it's the right thing to do, and there's work that we would wish to reclaim off of any legal processes that we might enter into following this, or will enter into after this. We've been taking a very careful record of our expenditure, because obviously we'd look to reclaim legitimate expenditure that we've had to incur through the failure to deliver a school. But a lot of what we've been doing and listening to the parents and children in the community is there's things that actually we've just done because it's the right thing to do. What we'll do is bring those reports back through SIPL, but obviously we'll pursue every single penny that we can in retribution. But there have been things that we've had to put in place, given the fact that the school was 3 schools wrapped into one. That was quite a logistical exercise to take out. But that'll be fully reported through SIPL, and certainly once we get the handover of a fit-for-purpose safe school, we will then be able to start bringing details to members of all the costs and all the potential that we'd look to reclaim through a legal case.
Thank you. Councillor Karen Carruthers.
Thanks, Leader. I think we need to stay focused and actually realise that we need a positive resolution to this outcome for our young people. And I was at the meeting that night, and I did hear from youngsters who actually were very articulate. They did talk about their anxieties, their fears of not passing their exams, the division that's been caused for one reason or the other. And I've heard of the educational support that's been put in place, but what I'd like to know is the psychological support as well, because this will definitely have knocked their confidence, it'll have increased their anxieties, their stressors at that young, vulnerable age. I'd like to know what support is in place.
Thank you. As I've alluded to in the report, we've tried to take a broad view of the support that we've put in place for pupils, recognising that pupils will have different needs immediately and over the course of the year, and people will want support in different ways, both collectively and individually. So we have a very skilled team of pastoral support staff in school, teaching and non-teaching staff. We have drop-in sessions for curriculum and for pastoral care. We have our wider colleagues through our youth services work, and we have a range of available referral routes for people with specific needs. So I'm confident that with the enhanced management capacity that we have in the school, the staff who are fully committed to the young people, that needs that young people raise with us over the course of the year will be responded to in a wide range of ways, whether these would be needs that young people in any of our schools would encounter, but the resources will be there for them.
Councillor Maitland, I hadn't seen that you were indicating that you wanted to come back after your question.
I did, and I'm grateful to you, Leader. Thank you very much indeed. Look, I think I've got to be absolutely clear about this. I understand that there are things which have to be done. Of course, there are things which have to be done, but I think members should be consulted upon these things, especially since it's clear that a budget line has not been identified for dealing with the extra costs. And I want to be. I think I've got to point out that members need to know in extremely straitened budget circumstances exactly what is going to be spent and what can be recovered. I think that's something which has to come to us as soon as possible.
Absolutely. Every pound that we've spent so far, we have taken the decision about how needy is there things that we can do. I mean, a simple example will be when we came to the furniture issue. That actually what we realised, we had no reserve of furniture, so say there was a burst pipe in a school, we would be able to replace it. So therefore, that could be seen as additional expenditure, but actually it now gives us the capacity we didn't have. So yes, absolutely, we'll report to the next SIPL committee fully where we are. And at that point, we should know where we are with getting the school back and the potential routes for a claim. And at that point, we took the Scottish Futures Trust in his initial fault exercise, which would form the basis of our claim. Would be undertaken as well. So we'll bring that all as soon as we can back to members for the consideration.
Councillor Favour.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I didn't really want us to get personal, to be honest with you, Councillor Nicholson, but bringing up my attendance record, I'm out there in the community doing things on a regular basis, whether I'm here or not. You know, at the end of the day, that's what I do. Get things achieved, get results done. If you want to come with me one day, feel free to. Thank you.
Chair, I don't think Councillor Fairbairn understood. The point I was making was that I was out in the community with a misleading statement it was making. It was portraying that we were doing absolutely nothing in North West Dumfries, and I just wanted to clarify that position.
Yeah, Councillor Davidson.
Thank you, Leader. I want to associate myself with your comments regarding the efforts that staff have put in. It's the same team that responded when the building had to be closed, when North West Campus had to be closed in the first place. They put in place very quickly the decant and alternative arrangements. They then dealt with a named storm that closed down the region for an entire day, and now they've recommissioned an entire building we didn't expect to use again. They've done all of that against the clock, and I should think under a fairly significant degree of pressure. These have all been absolutely hard deadlines, and they met every one of them. I think it's very important we don't lose in the sound and fury here the appreciation of what they have done. I want to look at paragraph 3.6.2. It puts me in mind of the debate at SIPL committee. George Jameson made a very important point about focusing on what's happening with the education of the young people, while we naturally have to debate what we're doing with recovering costs and who indeed is at fault for this whole sorry business. At that point, the decision at SIPL committee, if I remember rightly, was that we would get further updates on the way in which additional support, particularly for the senior phase, but not necessarily exclusively, was bedding in, how that was performing. I guess it was understood at that point that that would be something of a moving target, since it would depend on what the pupils themselves actually wanted. Clearly, circumstances have changed somewhat, but as 3.6.2 alludes to, the need for that additional support will remain. So I guess wanted to have perhaps reassurance that SIPL will continue to have a focus on getting updates on how that is bedded in and how it's working, and potentially not simply to its next meeting, but to subsequent meetings as required. I think that would be helpful.
Absolutely, thank you. Pupils told us very clearly they didn't want any additional study support in October, so we did not do that. But now, October holidays is now finished, and we've got focus groups in place for the first week back for the pupils to tell us how they wish that study support to be offered. As I mentioned, we have drop-in, face-to-face and youth work support already in place. We have parents' nights to rearrange for the beginning of November, and the pupil council and senior ambassador scheme have now been re-established. So we now need to work and give these young people a wee bit of time to tell us what support in what curriculum areas they need and how they want it, and then we'll respond to that.
Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Leader. My apologies for hiding around the corner here, and I'm also perched on a seat I'm going to fall It's been a tragic incident. There's absolutely no doubt, and I'm very much aware that it's now been tackled with it at pace, and also the communication streams are far better. Young people are resilient. I'm quite sure they will, given assistance, they will get through that. But we've also heard how well the staff are coping with this, even in our very cramped conditions in times. That is not the information that we've been getting. We've spoken to the union officials, and I see two of them are here today, and I'm quite sure if they were allowed to speak, they would support that as well, that the staff have significant concerns. They feel they're being left out. They feel that they need more support. So I would like some assurance that this will be looked at.
Gillian?
Absolutely. The staff have been fantastic throughout. To a man and a woman, the staff have given us full support and have worked tirelessly to support young people. But that's taken its toll. As it was mentioned, this has been going on all term, and the changing circumstances and changing timelines has been difficult. They're teaching in difficult circumstances without their existing resources, but they're a professional group of staff and they've done so very well. But I want to make sure that we as an employer continue to give them the support that they expect and deserve. We've got augmented management arrangements to make sure we've got the management leadership on site. Every site during the decant process had a principal teacher, deputy head teacher on site, and also the head teacher, operations manager, head of education and myself have been in regular contact with the union side as well as individual staff. So there's a range of HR supports as well as more informal supports that we've put in place, and that will continue. But I don't underestimate what they've had to work through, and I'll continue to support them over the coming term.
That, of course, is true of non-teaching staff as well as teaching staff, and the non-teaching staff have also had very difficult circumstances. Councillor Ian Carruthers.
Thank you, Leader. I made a few notes myself that night, being at the Parent Forum, I think it was, and I'll just refer to a paragraph, first 3.6.5. I'll just read the first sentence of that. I think just give you a third of where I'm heading. I think first sentence says, it will be important that we work closely with pupils and parents through the Parent Council, and it goes on. I just think we need to, as we do go forward, we need to make sure that we don't exclude the Parent Forum, because I think they're two different bodies, two different organisations, so we're as inclusive as we can. And I'll probably come to that point, because the council, it wasn't the Parent Council that night, and maybe Gillian could expand on that. It was a Parent Forum, but it was a very good public meeting, and it certainly allowed us to put our finger on the pulse and understand what was going on. Some of the comments that were made on the night, I'll read some of them, but not them all by any means, because I think quite a bit of this has been addressed, and I'll go through that already as the officials have took up on. So the parents brought up the fact that the older high school kids want their community back. They want to be back together, work together in a happy, comfortable place where they feel safe and relaxed. Lots of kids are thinking they're just giving up and leaving. That's what their thoughts were. So I think through what's already been started through our officials, that's gone back to a community campus being marked high. That's absolutely, so the start of that's been addressed. Another point that was picked up was final quality assurance checks. This in regards to the North West Community Campus, and it's not explicit within this report, so I think we have to keep our eye on. They were asking, they must be in the public domain before the teachers and the kids go back into that school, because they wanted publicly the reassurance that any checks that we were seeing as councillors, or through the council official, through a scheme of delegation, that was in the wider public domain to give them the confidence in regards to. So I think we have to pick up on that later on if we're getting. We'll probably ask for updated reports going forward over the next few weeks, if that's possible. We'll come to that point. All the kids got back together. I'll miss that one. Will the kids get a real chance to catch up if they fall behind? I think, again, the contingency plan as amended is certainly starting to address that. Now, some of the things I will just leave these in there, and hopefully as we come back with some kind of briefs, it's touched on very, very lightly within the report, but high levels of discrimination from teachers towards kids. That's some of the comments we've been mooted. We'll just leave that there. Hopefully that'll be picked up, whether it's factual or not, we're not sure. The kids are so far behind, they'll never catch up again. It looks like a contingency plan will start to address that. One of the things is when the kids go into school in the morning, one of the things is the parents get a text to say, listen, they're here, they've been through the roll call and they're here. Now in 45 minutes, it took for one child. So we just make sure if we get any briefing that type of thing's been addressed, and that was pointed out on the night and it was accepted, that was probably factual. Bullying was another thing that came up. Kids leaving the school unaccompanied. I'll not go on, I've took a few other notes, but it personalises the people who are actually involved in that. So I mean, again, it comes back to any further briefing. We're reasonably confident after speaking to the acting head director that these things are being addressed and that some of it's contained within the report, but I think we need updated reports. One thing we definitely actually have to is the communication. It's improved. It has improved. There's no two ways about that. So we're not criticising as was, but we're saying this communication has to be, including the parents, teachers, and the councillors, obviously, that it has to be at the highest level it possibly can be, and we will certainly champ at that in regards to make sure that everybody's involved. In particular, the local ward members, but obviously you've got your, we say the local board members in particular must be first and foremost, but then that goes on to your chairs and your spokespersons thereafter, so to speak. That must be rolled out. No, there was another. And the hot meals was the other thing. It's maybe been touched on, but the hot meals. So make sure that the hot meals. If I'll not go to the other things, I think it personalises and identifies things. But so hopefully, when it comes to recommendations, Chair, we'll get a chance to have some input in regards to. We'd like a further report, maybe in a month's time, to make sure it's an update regarding the points that have been raised today. These ones in particular. Obviously, other members have brought up their points, but I think it's only right. And the communication plan when it comes to and working with the local community. We don't want the parent forum to be excluded from that, so maybe a wee bit too prescriptive, I think, in 3.6.5 when it's saying it must be through the parent council. That was maybe just a typo, I don't know, but I think we have to make sure that that's expanded and everybody is included, Leader.
Well, I'm not really sure what the status of the parent forum is, but maybe Gillian's more aware of that.
I agree, the communication has been critical throughout this, and the best way to communicate with the parent forum is through the parent council, because the parent council is the elected group of parents who then represent the parent forum being all members of the school community. So I accept that it is normal practice for the parent council to be the conduit to communicate with the school or with the directorate on behalf of the parent forum. But if the parent forum, as any individual parent, wishes to meet with me or the head teacher, clearly they have a right to do that, and I'm always happy to speak with parents. But they are part of the parent forum, who in turn will report through to keep communication channels clear through the parent council, who are their elected representatives.
Any other comments on the number of issues raised by Councillor Carruthers?
I mean, certainly there were some specific issues raised regarding the notification of the children not in school. That was concerning. That was factual. There is normally a period-by-period registration, so if a child doesn't turn up to a class, we need to know about it. And a parent took an hour for that message to get through. That wasn't good enough. That needed to be fixed, and that was a technical problem in terms of a text messaging system across the decants. We fixed that, and I was happy to be alerted to that, because these were the kinds of things we were worried about through the decant, that young people would leave a school building and we would not know about it. So having that direct feedback was useful, and that allowed us to resolve the technical problem. I think other things that you mentioned are the part of the normal operational business of a school, but if there are trends that we need to be aware of, I'm happy to bring a report back.
Thanks. I've got Councillor Hislop next, followed by Councillor Fairbairn, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Lever and Councillor Inglis. Councillor Hislop.
Thank you, Leader. It's to do with the communication. I think when we're going forward, I do realise that there are things that will have to be kept confidential if there's anything to go, costs, etc. However, if there is an opportunity to tell people something, I think we need to do it. And I don't think it goes down well when we're sitting at the public meeting and we're informed that under no circumstances will Maxwell High School be reopened. That isn't a consideration, and then a week later we're headline Maxwell High School opening. We need to be honest with these people. We need to give them the information so that that confidence that they get from us is carried through. If you're saying one thing one week and a 180-degree turnaround the next week, I don't think that gives them confidence in what we're going forward with. So there might have been a reason why that was said on the evening, but I think if there was any opportunity where we can actually give them, it may be a consideration. That's what we should be saying, so that they can then see confidence that we're giving them all the information we can at the appropriate time.
Obviously, I don't know what was said at that particular meeting, but I do know that I spoke with the acting director during the week after the 7th of September as to whether or not the reopening of Max High might be a possibility. Now, at that point, the repairs and so on would take too long, and at that stage, we were hoping that the NWCC might actually reopen before the October holidays, or at very worst after the October holidays, and therefore it wasn't really an option at that time. So it may be that whoever gave that response was harking back to a previous inquiry rather than looking forward. But Gillian, do you want to comment further on that?
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, certainly when we had the 3-day turnaround in August, the business continuity plan indicates we needed to get the young people back to school by the Thursday, which is a 3-day turnaround. There was no way we could have recommissioned Maxwell High School in that 3-day period. But having the notification of the extension of the decant and having the 2 weeks of the October holidays coming up, that changed the options appraisal for us, and that allowed us to meet the deadline.
Councillor Fairbairn.
Thanks, Leader. Yeah, I'd just like to echo Councillor Carruthers and Councillor Hislop. What we were missing really was regular updates in relation to all councillors, not just selected councillors. After all, we're here to represent the people of Dumfries and Galloway. Then we're not misinformed really, then there's no bun fights between us all. So I think that's what we really need to address, and I think we've stepped up the game in relation to that. The second point is in relation to hot meals at St Ninian's. I believe we've only got one choice, the kids, and the parents are saying everywhere else has got 2 choices. Is that something that's been addressed?
I was under the impression that it was now the same menu as everyone else across Dumfries and Galloway, but I can certainly go back and check. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Leader. Just a couple of points. As a councillor who actually attends parent councils, and if councillors do in their own wards, they would actually know the status of the parent council and the parent forum before coming to this full council, which I think is an important point to make. Councillor Cutters had talked about, and I'm quite happy to be told if I heard incorrectly, but he said that there was discrimination of pupils by the teachers and occasions of bullying. If that is the case and you know of such examples, have you communicated these to officials before actually bringing it to a full council meeting to make sure that these very serious allegations are dealt with and taken forward? And I mean, we've just heard Councillor Fairbairn say that we've stepped up the game on communications, although earlier on he said that the communications still weren't good enough. It would be quite handy to get a clarification there. But I think the main thing is, what more communications, what are you looking for? We've stepped out a number of newsletters. I know certainly my inbox gets full of a couple of newsletters a week, a number of updates. What more information do you want, rather than just saying the communication needs to improve, because that doesn't actually tell us anything?
Councillor Lear.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, obviously a lot of what I was going to say has been said, but I think part of the problem was we've never been in a situation like this before, so it was totally unique. So effectively we had to bring actions into play on a moving basis, and speaking to the staff who were carrying out the refurbishment of Max High, they would have needed 2 weeks at least to get the school back into a situation where the pupils could return to it. We couldn't delay bringing the youngsters back into education for 2 weeks whilst we did that. So I think the interim arrangements which were put in place, whilst not perfect, they're the best we could achieve at that particular time. And once again, I'd echo the thanks to all the staff who've been involved and the forbearance of the pupils and the youngsters. And I can guarantee that this will be a standing item on the SIPL agenda for the next, well, as long as it actually serves a useful purpose, an update on this. But lessons will be learned from this. I know this, to a certain extent, has in the past been a bit of the council's motto that lessons will be learned, but they certainly will be learned from this. Yeah, sure, and there will be a full investigation into how we ended up in this situation in the first place.
Thank you. Councillor Inglis.
Thank you, Leader. I'm on page 13, 341. It says the council received a draft programme of works from Graham Construction, who have given a commitment to have all necessary works complete by December. We're almost a month into that now. Do we have an update on that, firstly? And secondly, there's a list of defects. Can elected members have sight of that list of defects?
I think there may be a slight misprint. I think Graham said it would be in December, not by December, but maybe Gillian can clarify that.
Indications were that the list would be within December, yes.
The list of defects that's available, is it?
There's an ongoing list of observations, as I understand. Yes.
Councillor Inglis.
Yeah, sorry, can I just come back at that? Yeah, I just wondered whether we could, as elected members, have sight of the original snagging list or a list of defects, just for our own information. But secondly, it does say that it will be complete by December. You know, if we're a month into that now, is there an update that says that that's likely to happen, or is it going to run into January? I know it might be something that you're not very sure committing to, but it would be helpful.
The information I have at the moment is that it will be complete within December, and certainly operationally I'm planning to have the young people back, as we've highlighted, that once we have full confidence in that, so this is Graham's list, once we have full confidence the work has been completed, my planning is that the young people will be back in school at the beginning of term. It might not be immediately at the beginning of term, but in the beginning of term, that's the deadline that we are working to, and I have no indication to change my thinking from that paragraph.
And as far as information is concerned, I think there are two separate issues. There's a list of observation and there's a work programme, but both are available for members on the assumption that members would not share them publicly because A, they might form part of a claim and actually they belong to the contractor. But absolutely any member had kind of full sight of both documents.
Councillor Crothers and then Councillor Nicholson.
Sorry, Leader, I'll come back. I mean, it's actually when we get to recommendations, I just want to be quite clear in what we're agreeing, but I take heart to what...
I thought you were wanting to answer the points that Councillor Wilson had made.
I can do that if you want. I mean, I'll absolutely do that. So the points he made was the bullying. So again, this comes back to... I'll just take it right from the notes. Let me find out where we are. Bullying and kids leaving the school unaccompanied was one thing, and there was one also with high levels of discrimination from teachers towards kids. Now that was public.
That's a very worrying allegation.
That was public announcement.
Excuse me, Leader, my question on when Councillor Curtis has raised these issues with officers of this council, and that was my...
I understand what his question was, so it's really about that. So what I'm trying to explain is that was in a public meeting where the acting head or acting director for SIPL was there, and I'm sure there was other senior management team members there. They were taking notes and taking that on board. So they were there, so they got it first hand the same time as what I got it. So I'm quite sure they're professional enough to take that on board. Another point was...
I don't know, I think I've answered it. Yeah. Councillor Nicholson.
Parent Forum, Parent Council, I think it was, but I'm fully aware of that in regards to that particular, how that process works.
Councillor Nicholson.
Well, that's the first time I've heard that, but, you know, and this is part of the problem. You know, misinformation or incomplete information breeds this kind of distrust when we're trying to build something up in Lochside that's going to last. And that trust has been damaged. It's been damaged not by this council, but, you know, through means that we're out with their control. I think on the bullying, I'll give you an example. I heard somebody that, you know, the parents were saying that there was this young boy, you know, kicked by about 20 other pupils from other schools, and this turned out to be misinformation. There was a very serious incident, which I've got confidence that officers and that were took on board, and it did happen, but it didn't happen from pupils from other schools. It happened from pupils within his own school. So you've got to try and disengage from half information and say, well, was this the cause of that, or was it not? Obviously, it was pupils from his own school that did that. So did the moving school have any implications on that or not? One thing on the communication, I think we're saying about councillors, we're saying about parent councils. I think the most important people are the parents, and one of the things that I have discussed and wanted looked at and implemented was a one-stop shop. A one-stop shop where a parent could contact the council, contact somebody in the council, and they would get the information. Now, I believe that is now within a pamphlet, a leaflet, where there's dedicated emails and numbers that people can then contact. Maybe you could expand on that a bit more, and that may give a bit more confidence to councillors and parents and children.
Thanks. That was described to us when we went round on Friday, but Gillian maybe want to share that with other members.
Thank you. We've tried to get a consistent message throughout the holidays, because normally our school bag drops and group calls, that would be our mechanism to get messages out to parents. But recognising it's in the holidays and that people still want information, we're using our community councils and our community centres and networks of parents to try and share as many messages as we can. So we've got drop-in points in 3 community centres, we've got a generic email address, and we've got an ask it basket, I think that was the phrase that was used, where people can post questions. If they've got questions that they want to answer, then we'll take those questions on board, and the boxes will be opened every couple of days, and I'll respond to them, or our parental engagement officer will respond to those questions directly. We won't be able to get to all of the parents all of the time, but we're doing as much as we can to engage with a wide range of parents, either through digital, through social media, or good old-fashioned face-to-face and suggestion boxes.
But the assurance that we were seeking on Friday was that where individual parents had asked a question, that would be responded to quickly and in a manner which makes sense, in plain English, if you like, rather than anything that people might struggle to understand what was meant by the answer, that people need to have quickly turned around comprehensible answers when they've got an issue that they're concerned about. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Leader. I'm just absolutely astounded that what Councillor Crowther said was that he was told of bullying and discrimination of pupils by teachers nearly 2 weeks ago and has done absolutely nothing to raise these issues and to get a solution to them. I think that it just shows you what the grandstanding and the sort of questioning the administration's leadership on actually what the alternative is.
Councillor Crothers, could you use your microphone, please?
It's a complete insult, to say the least. We called this meeting, the administration didn't call it. That's talking about leadership. Councillor Fairbairn, this is turning it nothing more than a political rant from your group leader. The SNP are saying but they're actually taking a professional view in regards to how this goes forward. We've brought this here in a non-offensive way, try to be constructive the best we can, and all we've got is your group of members, some of them in particular, being offensive towards some of ours. It's terrible the way it's been allowed to go on.
Well, Councillor Fairbairn made a fairly political statement in the press, which I think is probably the basis on which some of the comments have been made. There was there were issues stated in the press by Councillor Fairbairn which are at the origin of this. Councillor Nicholson.
Chair, can we ask for some respect for yourself? There's people there that are shouting over the top of each other and making insulting comments. So I would ask that stop now. I would ask for you to stop that, and if not, you could ask them to leave.
Point well taken. Yep. Any further questions, comments, please? Councillor Crothers.
As we move towards the recommendation, I would just ask, pick up on the point that Councillor Laver made. I think it's only right that the watchers have a careful eye over it, and if he's given us the reassurance that we'll see this on a bi-monthly basis, but over the next month is what he's saying. I think it's the end of November, the next SIPL committee. Certainly be heartened by that. That would, if we could put that into the recommendations, Leader, that we actually do see that in the next SIPL committee, they can then decide thereafter how often they see that. Very much supportive of that. But taking into consideration the report that comes forward, the points that have been made today, we have to be absolutely clear.
Okay, I think that was a standing item on the SIPL committee, but I think we'd all be happy to agree that a report is submitted on progress to the next SIPL committee. It would only be appropriate. Okay. So we agreed that we have considered the contents of the report, and our recommendation is that a report on the updated report be presented to the SIPL committee, which I think is in November. Yep. Okay. We can move on to agenda item 4 of the Whitesands Flood Protection Scheme. This report by the Director of Economy, Environment and Infrastructure sets out the Council's current position in relation to the Whitesands Flood Protection Scheme and provides the context for the debate as requested in the requisition submitted under Standing Order 6.6 requesting the special meeting. And we have to agree first to withdraw delegation from the Economy, Environment, Infrastructure Committee. Okay, agreed? Thank you. And I'll now open the up to member debate. I think the chair of EEI wishes to say something.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm actually astounded that this has come back to a full council in the last EE&I committee. The EE&I forward business plan was put very much in front of the members in there, and that was agreed, and that included the Tory councillors that were actually there within the committee. If you look at Chair 3.9.2, and we do have to understand that this is going to local inquiry, and it's local inquiry on the flood protection scheme that was put forward by Dumfries and Galloway Council. It does say quite clearly it would free up 2.853 million within the current programme over the period 2019-20. If members chose to reallocate this fund at new capital, there would be no revenue savings associated with that. So I'm at a loss as to why this is brought forward as Tory councillors. And it was made quite clear at the committee by Councillor Marshall that they actually agreed to the Whitesands flood protection scheme being in the forward business plan. I just wonder if this is coming from the Tory group within the council, or perhaps from Holyrood and Westminster offices.
I invite any further comment, please. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Leader. I took the time to read the guidance on the flood protection scheme in the 2009 Act, and it quite clearly states that it's essential that schemes enjoy a broad consensus of support from the community affected. And this is clearly not the case with this particular scheme. And it's a tacit admission by the fact that it's going to a public local inquiry, that the rest of the council will see it in a very similar way. This will have huge economic and environmental impact on Dumfries. We've not had any discussion about the whole life costs of this project. There's massive concerns about the rising capital cost potentially going forward with other works required as a part of it. We're going to have 3 years of disruption, and again on the guidance makes allowance for compensation throughout that 3-year period. I don't see any allowance made for compensation payments for businesses and affected land users. The scheme also requires a great deal of manual effort. If we have a severe flood, there are 200 panels to be dragged out of storage and put up to stop the flood happening. This is going to be an ongoing resource requirement, and given the state of our finances potentially going forward, I think it's very significant. A simple fact is, will we have the staff in place to carry these things out? I think a much simpler plan would be better. I looked through the previous papers as well. I wasn't on the council at the time, and I noticed the results of the consultation. It seemed to be quite a bit of spin put on the actual results to show that there was broad support. I think it's undoubtedly there is support for a scheme, but I don't think we've got support for this scheme. And when we go forward into this inquiry, we're spending an awful lot of money on lawyers. We've got 7 weeks worth of attendance potentially for staff members, which again is an ongoing revenue cost, which really needs to be taken into account. I think it's time to go back to the people, ask what sort of scheme they want, and try and progress that. Thank you.
Okay. As the director, do you wish to answer any of those points? No? No? Right, we also have Councillor Carruthers then.
Thank you, Leader. I mean, obviously support what Councillor Johnston's saying. I've been here a few times though. I suppose the first thing is just to appreciate the fact we're actually getting a chance to speak about this today as well. Concerns that I've got in regards to this scheme, Anybody who I've spoke to, apart from I think 2 people in Dumfries, didn't want it. They just didn't want it. They don't see the water scheme. They just didn't want this earth bund. £25 million is its current cost. The likelihood is, looking at other local authorities across Scotland, they'll increase considerably. Probably near £40 million by the time we get to absolute completion. Our contribution, in as far as we will have a financial contribution when it comes to this. So as it stands, I think it's around about the £5 million mark. We've contributed towards that already. So if that goes up, I think it will go up exponentially. I think it will be at least £40 million. If you look at what's happened over at DG1, as an example, and actually, like I said, in other local authorities across Scotland, whether it's in the Borders, whether it's in the Highlands, these things do go up. There's always unknown quantities in there when you start digging in the ground that have to be addressed through a schedule of works. So, how do we actually fund this thing as it goes forward? If the public local inquiry goes through, and for some reason, some absurd reason, it's actually Scottish Government think through amendments, I would imagine there will be amendments, but actually we will go ahead with this scheme. And how do we actually fund it? We've got 3 years in which to implement it. How do we address that particular problem? So it's 25 million now, our contribution is 5. And the Scottish Government will invest up to 80%, could be 60%. There's a big gap there. Where's that money coming from? As it stands, I mean, we've got a second phase in Dumfries, for instance. The money's been spent in Dumfries, so if the money was still to be spent in Dumfries, we've got a second phase of the Dumfries Learner Town. It could contribute towards that. So we're putting money into a flood defence scheme that nobody wants, or we're putting money into schools that we actually need as essential in regards to delivering for our pupils and for future budget savings. There's got to be difficulties there, let's face it. We're looking at £40 million worth is what we're looking at. I think we'll ever achieve that in regards to we made some constrained decisions, I think you could say, recently about the transformation board and what we actually look at. So I think that'll be difficult to actually reach that 40 million, but we will be constrained. But should we be going forward with this scheme? There's too many unknown quantities. All we are asking for is to remove this. We will come forward to get to that point in the motion as we go forward, but we'll be asking to remove this from the capital programme with immediate effect, firstly. And secondly, whatever the outcomes, if Scottish Government decide that they will go forward with the public local inquiry, which they probably will, no Scottish Government, but the outcome of that, there'll be probably some valuable information there that we can actually take on board and then come forward with a proposed plan that actually meets the costs, actually the financial availability within Dumfries and Galloway's very financially constrained situation as it stands going into the next few years, and the aspirations of the community as it doesn't at this moment in time. So, Leader, that just as a starter for 10. We don't think we should be taking this. We ask that it's taken off the board straight away, off as a capital project. We'll go back to the drawing board, and like I said again, I think the likelihood of it actually coming to completion at any point, limited to say the least, because 80% is the maximum Scottish Government will give us. The prices will increase from 25 million. There's other options out there that the community would actually get behind, Leader.
Councillor Davidson.
Well, thank you, Leader. It seems we're in this curious situation again where we've got what's on the paper in front of us and then the speeches which I think were probably drafted for the previous debate. They don't really appear to make all that much congruence between what we see in front of us and what's actually being discussed here. But let me try and go through it so I can understand what we're actually being asked for. So Conservatives have asked us to consider the removal of the project from the Council's capital investment programme and what the merits of the decision would be. So we've got here it would free up 2.853 million. Well, no doubt that's a useful sum, but of course it also says quite clearly, the bit that has not been mentioned by them, that there's already the 2.1 million that's been committed that we probably have no prospect whatever of recovering. So we don't get our 20% back. We're down at around about the 10% or slightly more. Now, if we go on further and look at what they're saying on the paper, to discuss the options Council will have after the decision of the PLI to reconsider a flood prevention scheme. If that is to be a different scheme, which it would seem that it is, who knows? But if it's to be a different scheme, then it might be fair to assume, and there's a lot of assumption going on here, we're already assuming 40 million or the cost of the moon landings or something of that nature. So let's assume a little bit further. It might be the case that we require a little bit of money to put towards some of the work that would have to be done for a brand new scheme. But we won't have that money because we won't have allocated it in the capital programme. And then we go on to that meets with public approval. So how do we weight public approval? Because the public might approve of a scheme that doesn't actually provide flood defences at all, far less flood defences that reach the minimum level at which you would get the 80% from the Scottish Government. So I guess the question I have is, and I'm trying to be professional given the comments that were made earlier on, just what is it you want?
Councillor Wilson.
Councillor Davidson's made a number of points that I was going to make. I don't think I would have done it quite justice, so thanks very much. I do want to, because I am confused, because we have a requisition here that quite clearly talks about removing it from the Council's capital investment programme. But the last line talks about any recommendation of the public local inquiry. I mean, what you're proposing would lead to us actually going and asking in an objector-led public local inquiry what the views of people in Dumfries are, and for those to be held, and my understanding is that actually groups are helped, and anybody who wants to make a representation is given and is helped with finding legal representation, and I'm quite happy to be told that that isn't true, but that is my understanding, that all efforts are made to make sure that everyone can make sure their voice is heard. Why do the Conservative group want to remove any funding for a scheme when they aren't even going to consider what recommendation comes out of that public local inquiry? And I think we've heard about, I think Councillor Johnson said about there's support for a scheme, just not this scheme. What other options would the Conservative group like us to entertain and consider?
Councillor Driver.
Thanks very much, Chair. And you know, it's good to hear that Councillor Davison and Councillor Wilson are of the same mind as me. So going forward with this particular one, the motion should be that this goes forward as already agreed by full council. However, full reports come back to full council, not EE&I committee, because obviously it's such a large project. After the local inquiry has made its decision, I think we can keep on trying to bring these things back and back, but if we don't know what the local inquiry actually is going to say, then we will need to make decisions at full council when it has made its recommendation, when the Scottish government report has made its decision, to come back to full council and make those decisions as appropriate.
Councillor Lever.
Well, I was simply going to ask Councillor Johnson what his easier, simpler proposal is, because, I mean, we all will be willing to take that on board.
Okay, Councillor James.
Thank you, Leader. I think politicians are apt to sort of back themselves into corners where they've got to defend not very good proposals. And I've talked to proponents of this project, and I believe there are a couple. They're few and far between, but they've told me that there's a block on investment on the Whitesands waterfront because of flooding. And, well, that might hold more water if there was a flood of investment in the uptown area of Dumfries, but they're clear it isn't. So that argument is spurious, and it's just a typical argument we're getting made for this project. I'm in my first term as a councillor, and I've already seen several financial fiascos, and I think, like the other first-termers here, we share in the corporate guilt and the embarrassment, but we try to console ourselves. Well, we weren't actually there at the time when the decisions were made. But if I could remind all the first-timers, we actually are in the room this time, and we are making the decision. This is on our watch. DG1, the Northwest Campus, were relatively straightforward types of construction. This that we're talking about at the moment is bespoke civil engineering. And even successful organisations with better track records than D&G procurement and even Scottish Government procurement could well get their fingers burnt with this type of operation. So for me, even if there was a guarantee of success, I wouldn't like the project anyway, but I think we should reflect on the risk. It's true, it's very shallow flooding there, and we have deep debt. And so what should we do? There's never a dilemma for Labour, never ever a dilemma for Labour. This is an opportunity for Labour to spend money, max out the corporate credit card, and so it's ideal for them. But for the others here, we have to worry. Even the silent SNP there, I think, are considering whether they should be the lemming party to join the Labour Party or not. They'll be contractually bound to support Labour today, as always, but I mean, there's the chance of going and forming a queue and having a comfort break to avoid the vital moment, perhaps. The independents who always support Labour, surely today they're going to jump on the opportunity to shamelessly garner some public plaudits by voting another way and showing a semblance of independence for once. The sensible people of Castledillis and Crocketford do not want their money just blown away in this wasteful manner. I didn't want the public inquiry, so I don't think I'm guilty there. I just want to cut the debt, so I'm very happy to support the motion. Thank you.
I don't think we actually have a motion or an amendment yet, but I'm sure we'll come to that. To say, Councillor Davidson didn't strike me as particularly silent. He seemed fairly articulate. But and also, as somebody who had an office very near the Whitesands for many years, I can assure you it was not shallow flooding. It could be pretty deep flooding at times. But also, Councillor Crothers, you wanted to come back to on some issues.
I suppose the first issue was that Deputy Leader said he was confused. Well, administration are quite often confused without being personal about it, Rob, but I think you are often confused as an administration. What is the new scheme? I think we've outlined that, what would come forward. But again, maybe Councillor Johnston will pick up on that. We say there's a better scheme can come forward. There's many schemes that can come forward that will have the community backing. For instance, looking upstream, we can actually put some kind of sustainable drainage systems in place, replanting a forest, looking at further storage. So actually, when you're looking at nearly a 3 metre high Bundy, you could probably reduce that by 2.5 metres and get at least as much flood defence protection. So I mean, in regards to that, absolutely, I think there is a bit of confusion here. There's not really been many questions asked in regards to how we fund this or answers given how we actually fund this going forward with it. We don't think that £25 million has got to look at it. We don't think we'll get the money in within the 3 years. Scottish Water's also got a contribution towards this. We're not really getting actually getting the nitty-gritty and asking the questions. I mean, fundamentally, Scottish Water, they're fundamental. If we cannot build this any type of flood defence scheme with them investing through their capital programme money and putting add somewhere between £8 and £10 million worth of work there. So they stop all that water when it's above their invert level in their drainage systems, coming back up through, blowing our drains away, and so on and so forth. So we know for a fact that it's not on their agenda. It's not in their capital scheme. Scottish Water are not going to invest in that. And if they were to put it in, it'd be 3 to 5 years. It's out with the 3-year programme. This is a complete waste of time. Why we're not looking upon this in a realistic manner? This will not go ahead. It will not go ahead anyways. Let's stop and take forward something that the people in Dumfries want. That's all we're asking for. Take out. How simple is it to take out the capital programme and go back? If the Scottish Government are foolish enough to go forward with a public local inquiry, if the scheme wasn't there, we weren't taking it forward. If they were foolish enough to do that, then whatever the outcome of that inquiry was, would then go into a future scheme that may well come forward. That's what we're asking.
Okay, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Leader. I do enjoy a contribution by Councillor James to this meeting of full council. It does make the meeting ever so slightly better. I do just have to say, I mean, you get Councillor Crothers spoke about spending the money on something else. You get Councillor James spending about less debt. In all the laughter and all the jokes and everything else, there's actually businesses that are desperately wanting action to make sure that their premises does not flood again. I went to speak to just a local organisation about something completely different, and they were desperate to know exactly what was happening because it was vitally important to them that they didn't lose what is actually their livelihoods. And I think that it's important that we remember everyone who's affected, and that we don't just go taking things out of a capital programme without listening to everyone's views, objectors or proposals. So I think it's important that we actually do remember everyone in this debate.
Councillor Johnston.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I think to go through this public local inquiry, which I'm sure will come back with basically one of two options. I'd be very surprised if it doesn't dismiss the scheme. I'll be surprised, really surprised, if it doesn't come along with amendments. And I think that is potentially the direction we're going. And for Councillor Davison's quite right about taking the money out of the capital budget. But if the amendments are at such a level, we're going to have to recost it. So we're going to have to recost said budget in the first place. So we need to put some of the money back in potentially if we're going to go ahead with what comes back from the inquiry. And I think the people of Dumfries would be a lot happier with that. We've got loads of people throughout the upstream and downstream with concerns that don't seem to be taken seriously. There's been no economic impact assessment on the town centre, which remember is struggling. And after 3 years of construction work down in the Whitesands, I think it probably would be just a step too far for the town centre. But we need to come back with some accurate and meaningful figures before we can allocate money in the budget. And equally, I'm sure some of the expenditure that's already been made in this scheme will be including things like modelling of the rivers and things like that. It's not necessarily entirely to be dismissed. But I do think this would be an opportunity to take it away from the budget and reassess it, go back to the drawing board.
Councillor Dempster.
Hey, thanks, Leader. I can't believe that members here are just wanting to sit and agree that we allow the Whitesands to flood at will, and we just simply do nothing or take this out of the budget. Personally, I think that's unacceptable. I think what members have forgotten is the regional transport hub. Everybody in Dumfries and Galloway has an input into this. And I don't know how you're going to ask everybody whether or no. You maybe need to consult on whether they want to be consulted or no. So that's the kind of stage we're at. And I think procrastination is a theft of time. I think that's where we're going. It's just a delaying tactic, and I think it's a shame. I think it's a shame that we're trying to achieve something, we're trying to protect businesses, we're trying to create something positive, and some members want to take that away. I just think it's wrong. I suggest we just move on with the thing.
Councillor Dryburgh.
Thanks very much, Chair. And I see officers sitting in the corner hoping that they're not going to be asked to be ransom fee. And Chair, well, I'm sorry you're coming in. Local inquiry, it's going to go ahead anyway. Is that correct? Secondly, we will look at what's come out. We've already agreed as a full council what we should get out from that. So I want to make sure the officers get some input here to make sure where we are, where we're going with this, and making sure that some of these questions have been answered. So I'll ask officers to do that.
Right, thank you, Leader. I can confirm the inquiry will go ahead. That's absolutely the case. We are currently working on precognitions, and they have to be in by midnight tomorrow night. And then the inquiry will commence on the 2nd of November. On the other questions, the Scottish Water issue, the costs of 25 million include the costs for the Scottish Water Works. That's why they don't have a specific allocation in their programme. The costs are included in our scheme, and 20% of these costs will be covered by the Scottish Government, and we will certainly be trying our best to get a recompense back from Scottish Water for these works. On the flooding of the upper reaches, that was looked at in great detail. I can remember attending a meeting in here with landowners right up the river north, and we modelled it, and it didn't work. And there was great objection to that at that time. So we have thoroughly looked at this scheme and given members our best advice. We've followed what members have instructed at all times through the various committee reports. We issued a master plan for the whole area. That master plan was confirmed by Council on February 15. There was 12 representations to that master plan, and that master plan being agreed by Council was adopted as supplementary guidance in the current LDP. And on the basis of that, it's that planning basis that the inquiry will consider.
Do you have any further questions, contributions? Okay. Councillor Hislop.
Could Alistair just clarify, it might have been a slip of tongue, we're only getting 20% of Scottish Water's eligible costs. Was that what you said?
If I
and then
said
we
that,
would have to ask Scottish Water, who haven't allocated money for this. So we would pay 80% of the costs if it's not in their plan.
If I said it incorrectly, what I meant to say was that the Scottish Government will cover 80% of the Scottish water costs. And we will pay the 20%, but we will try and recover that.
Okay. Councillor Carruthers?
And what is that? What is that figure? This is what I was alluding to earlier. What is that actual figure? If that's the case, it's still a large figure. It's got to be £1.5 million, £2 million. That's looking at that. I think in basic terms, it certainly looks like a £10 million project. And after that, I wouldn't mind. Just I'll put forward a motion, Leader.
In the cost estimate build-up, Councillor Carruthers, there's about 1.8 million in drainage works, which includes the pumping station, and then there's a further 1.5 million in the scheme cost for services and utilities, which includes some of the diversions.
And 80% of that will be covered by the Scottish Government. Councillor Carruthers, do you want to put forward your motion?
Just for personal experience, I would feel that's so far removed from actual factual, but I'll stay away from that. So, certainly as a motion, what I would like to put forward is that we'll listen to the people in Dumfries and its wider community, and so this is fully, and we remove the Whitesands Flood Protection Scheme project from the Council's capital investment programme with immediate effect, as being the first part. And the second part of that would be, after decision of public local inquiry, to reconsider a flood prevention scheme for the Whitesands area that meets the public approval whilst taking into consideration the decision and any recommendations from that public local inquiry.
Do you have a seconder for that motion?
The question here, is that actually competent, because there's been nothing budgeted for there? Competent.
Right, yeah, advice I'm getting is that it is competent. Okay, do you have a seconder for your motion? Well, I'd like to propose an amendment, and my amendment would go as follows. The Council notes that the reporter appointed by the Scottish Government can only consider the flood prevention scheme submitted by Dumfries and Galloway Council and is not empowered to make recommendations regarding any alternative schemes. The Council reaffirms its commitment to accept the recommendations of the inquiry reporter in full. Any alterations required to the capital programme with respect to flood prevention will be considered after that decision is announced. And that's my amendment. Do I have a seconder? Can we proceed to a vote?
Leader?
Amendment.
Deputy Leader?
Amendment.
Councillor Blake?
Motion.
Councillor Brodie?
Amendment.
Councillor Dougie Campbell?
Amendment.
Councillor John Campbell?
Amendment.
Councillor Ian Carruthers?
Motion.
Councillor Karen Carruthers?
Motion.
Councillor Charteris? Motion. Councillor Dempster?
Amendment.
Councillor Dryborough?
Amendment.
Councillor Fairbairn?
Motion.
Councillor Giusti?
Motion.
Councillor Hagman?
Amendment.
Councillor Howie?
Amendment.
Councillor Hislop? Councillor Ingalls?
Motion.
Councillor James? Councillor Johnston? Councillor Lever?
Amendment.
Councillor Little?
Amendment.
Councillor McGregor? Councillor Maitland?
Amendment.
Councillor Marshall?
Amendment.
Councillor Martin?
Amendment.
Councillor McClelland?
Amendment.
Councillor McComb?
Amendment.
Councillor McKee?
Amendment.
Councillor Nicholl?
Motion.
Councillor Nicholson?
Amendment.
Councillor Ronnie? Councillor Scobie? Councillor Sloan? Councillor Stitt?
Amendment.
Councillor Surtees?
Amendment.
Councillor Tate? Councillor Thompson?
Amendment.
Councillor Wilson?
Amendment.
Councillor Wood?
Amendment.
Councillor Young?
Amendment.
The amendment is carried by 26 votes to 14.
Thank you. Can we continue to item 5? Members should note that while this is the most notice of motion on the Stranraer trains, members should note that whilst notice of motion received out with the normal timescale stipulated in the standing orders, as leader I have taken the view that the matter is of such significance that I agreed for it to be included in the agenda for today's meeting as an urgent item. Can members confirm that they are content to withdraw delegation from the EEI committee in relation to this matter? Okay, content? Good. Okay. Before I call Councillor Giusti, I should say that on the 14th of October, the Chief Executive and I agreed that I should write to the leader of South Ayrshire Council and to the Transport Secretary regarding the continuing problems at Ayr Station and the failure of the task force at that time to find a resolution within the agreed timescales. The following day, I received notice of this motion, which asked for many of the actions which are contained in my letters, which you've had copies of. However, I consider that given the urgency of the situation, I should continue to issue the letters rather than delay the issuing of the letters until after this meeting. Can I invite Councillor Giusti to propose his motion?
Thank you very much, Chair. The primary reason for the motion going forward is that on Friday the 9th of October, there was an update from the Transport Scotland Task Force that they would not be able to reopen the line on the previously stated date of the 21st of October. Now, my motion, seconded by Councillor Scobie, emphasised the need for Dumfries and Galloway Council to take a position on the temporary closure of the Stranraer line, which affects many in Whitesands and Kirkcudbright. There are major issues for students, commuters and even hospital goers. With the lack of the rail service, although buses have been provided, they're far from a suitable solution, especially considering the condition of the roads north. I move that the Council's position should be robust and that the Transport Scotland Task Force must ensure services are resumed immediately for our local residents. The people of Whitesands and Kirkcudbright are looking for leadership on this. So far they are being punted from pillar to post, and the Council has the opportunity to show this leadership today by actively endorsing the use of the Townhead junction in Ayr. Although this is a Transport Scotland issue, D&G Council needs to publicise all information for residents to access on our media outlets. And that's my motion.
Thank you, Councillor Giusti. Councillor Scobie?
Thank you, Leader, for taking this as an emergency item of business, as indeed it is, given the situation in Stranraer and wider afield to the whole of the Machars and indeed into Kirkcudbright. I think the first part of the motion calls for the fullest of information, and so far we have neither had the fullest information nor has this been accurate information. We were led to believe by an MSP that the line to and from Stranraer would indeed open on the 21st of October. Well, that has not been the case. And then we were led to believe that it would be the end of October. And still, we haven't had an accurate date as to when the line will be open. The information that has been provided has been put on Transport Scotland, I believe, or Transerve's website. And many of the people of Stranraer just don't have a chance, the large majority, of ever accessing this web page. So I've continually asked that the Transport Scotland and Transerve put this information to the local papers so that people have a chance that they can actually see what is going on as and when they do provide us with information. And we do need a lot more than what we're being provided just now. So I think the first part of the motion is asking that we be given the fullest information in an appropriate way, and indeed that it is accurate. The next one, the next bullet point talks about the Transport Scotland in putting forward an alternative solution. And I think it was last week they came out with a statement that they were looking at this. Well, they've known about the Townhead since the day that the service was shut off, and they should have been doing a lot more in providing that as a temporary station point. It's only south of the current railway station. And I'm looking at, I'm sure Gavin will know where we're actually talking about, and I believe it's behind Morrison's building. That there are sidings to it. They used it in the past, many years ago, so there's no reason why they can't do it, and indeed shouldn't be doing it. So I think, as Andrew has already said, we should be looking for that with immediate effect, just as soon as this is possible. I just looked at a text I got from one of the Action Group members, and I think someone is surveying that today. So I would hope that this council would put pressure on Transport Scotland, the task force, to actually deliver this. We had the ridiculous situation only a week or so ago where the A714 was completely shut off, and the whole of the Macas area in Newton Stewart right into the South Macas, and I have no doubt many in Kirkcudbright, were completely cut off from the rail services. They couldn't access the bus. The buses from Bar Hill. And when we do consider the buses are far from adequate in dealing with people with disability. So much that they put on taxi services. But that's not being made well known in the information that we are getting. I'd move to the last point, and that we move that the full council continues to receive updates. Well, I think that we did ask for a report to go to the Wigton Area Committee. That was the last one, and we didn't receive that, and we were advised that it would go to EEI. What we got was a briefing paper, and I think as a council we need to be getting these updates, not by briefing papers, but a full report so that we know progress is being made. And I would hope that that point would include the Wigton Area Committee, because we're the people that's most affected by this whole situation. So in that respect, I would hope that we do have a full report, that we can note that there is progress being made with immediate effect, that the line is open, and we start to see rail services to and from Stranraer immediately from leaving this meeting today. So I would hope, Chair, because there are other things in terms of the lobbying, and that's in terms of the A77 and the A75, but I will come back with a motion on that one, Chair. But we, only about 2 weeks ago, we were completely isolated when we had the A77 and the A75 closed, and we didn't have a rail service, and people had to take exceptional detours on that. If it had happened this week with the A714, God knows where they would have gone as a detour. So it is having an effect on the economy, and I would hope that the council will take it on board, will move on it, and that we will see the rail services open with immediate effect. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. Got Councillor Ross-Surtees.
Thank you very much, Leader. Yeah, I welcome bringing this issue to full council. It is incredibly serious, and at the risk of repeating everything that Andrew and Willie have said this afternoon, I just on the bus issue, it's not only difficult for people with disabilities and all of the problems that the buses have, but it's also the fact that the bus takes a lot longer, so you have to put time on your journey. And I also understand that the college in Ayr has changed its entire timetable to fit in with the problems that this is causing us. And the isolation that we felt when the roads were closed was undisputable. However, the information about the fact that the alternative station is being surveyed today is really important, and I note that the council have written to the Minister and to the Leader of Ayrshire Council, and I welcome these updates.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I think it's really important this has been brought out. I think that Willie is right. The moment that the services were sort of being cut off, options should have been looked at, and I think that anyone who even just took a glimpse of what was happening would realise that actually that it's probably going to be a long-term thing before actually getting Ayr Station, the hotel, actually back to some sort of fit and proper state. And I think that, but it's just important to remember. I know a lot of the information hasn't been that great, but obviously the information about that doesn't originate from this council, and I think it's important that ongoing that we make representation as well to get this town head depot back into use, but also to make sure that the fullest of updates are provided. I just have one small question for officers, and that is, there was a concern that there wasn't actually a train on the track between Stranraer and Ayr, and that obviously to provide the service between Stranraer and Ayr, you would have to have a train on the track between Stranraer and Ayr, and I understand that no train is able to go through Ayr train station to get down to the south track. And is there a method of actually making sure there's a train available so that we can get the services running back between Stranraer and the town head depot in Ayr?
Thank you, Chair. At the present time, there is no way of getting a train through safely through Ayr Station. The risk assessment is not allowing a train through. There is work ongoing to look at a method to make that happen, and that will be discussed at the task force tomorrow night evening when the next meet as well. So they're bringing back a risk assessment of walking a train through when it is safe to do so. But until there's a train on that side of the track, there can be no reinstatement of a service.
Thanks for that. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Leader. I must say I do share the frustration that will be taking place through in the west. However, the station has created a lot of difficulties, so much so that at the last meeting of the RTP chairs, I put forward and got the support of the other chairs that we would be seeking information and monitoring of all facilities relating to public transport, so that we know for the future what is happening with regards to their state of safety. Because the reality is that within Ayr, my understanding is that that hotel is in private ownership, and as such has been allowed to get out of control without proper scrutiny as such. So, we are where we are, and I would also like to emphasise that we are fortunate in having the officers, Douglas and his team. They have been meeting twice a week, and I do recognise that communication could have been better, but I think that you'd all agree today, within the other debates we've had, communication seems to be an issue as well. So, it's something that, as a council, we have to definitely improve on. And as such, I would like to put an amendment forward as 2.3, confirm that the council emphasises the need for improved inclusive communication with elected members and service users, while also continuing pressure on Transport Scotland Task Force to confirm dates of reopening. So that's what I'm putting forward at the moment. I can also advise the council that on Wednesday I am meeting with the Transport Minister, and Douglas will confirm that that is number one on the agenda. So, you will be getting full support from myself and Douglas to make sure that the Minister fully understands what's been taking place, and we'll be looking for some really good answers, and we will report back.
Councillor Wood, you are proposing that as an additional recommendation? Yeah. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, it's just in response to what Douglas has said there in terms of the risk assessment. They've known about the station hotel since 2004, when this was first raised. That's 14 years that they've been running trains in and out of the Ayr railway station. So to come back now and say, risk assessment doesn't allow, then I am no expert on the movement of trains, nor would I profess to be. But, I have worked about goods yards and everything else, and they can, whatever it's called, they can push a train through. So they can, and I'm sure they can do this, if the will was there to actually do it. They did say that they were going to put up scaffolding in September, working right through to the mid-October, and that was 24/7, completely encapsulating the whole of the station hotel, which they seemingly have done, and now they find that there's something wrong with the roof. I don't know how they'll fix a scaffold in there, maybe with some sky hooks. But anyway, the situation is, I'm sure they can find a way, and they can find another way of putting two locomotives in the sidings that are at Townhead, I don't think it's just totally acceptable that we accept, because of risk assessment, that there isn't a way that they can do it. If there's a will, there will be a way, and I hope that this council, in adopting the motion today, does put forward that we want to see this opened with immediate effect, rather than wait until some time in the new year to see. I think I read on Facebook, now that they've found there's something wrong with the roof, I think somebody put on saying that I hope the carpets are okay.
Councillor Inglis.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I would fully support this motion. I think there's a feeling in the west of the region that the people have a label round their neck of low to medium priority, and I think we need to try and change that if we can. So I would hope this council fully backs this motion.
Councillor McComb.
Thanks, Leader. I would urge support for this motion, and it really is vital that this railway line be reopened as quickly as possible. Once again, the A714 is closed this week. There is no road link between Newton Stewart and Girvan. And next weekend, I understand, again, the A75 and the A77 will both be closed. So it is high time that action be taken to reinstate the railway, and indeed, in the longer term, to improve the road communication as well.
Councillor Nicholl.
Yes, thanks, Leader. I fully back Andrew and Willie on this. Yes, we feel, or a lot of people who use the train, or use the train, feel shut off in the far west. The difficulty is that the longer this railway line is not running, the more the people in the higher authority who are running British Rail or ScotRail or whatever they want to call themselves will get the idea that maybe the folk in Stranraer don't need a train, the folk in Bar Hill don't need a train. Well, they do. And we need to get this train back and running. And if the object of the exercise is to try and get a train south of Ayr to run on that bit of line, I'll drive it through. I wouldn't be frightened. I don't know how to drive a train, but I'll learn bloody quick. And I think that's just a big excuse. As Willie says, this has been known about for years. And, trains were running up until whatever the day they stopped them. They could have stopped one on the other side. This needs to be sorted, because otherwise there's a danger we'll lose the whole line, and that cannot be allowed to happen.
Yes, I recognise that as a fear, though. I suspect if you're driving the train and you don't know how to drive it, we might all feel a little bit nervous of it. But it's a point well made. I mean,
You haven't seen me driving a car, Leader.
Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Leader. And as someone who uses the train every single week, absolutely. I'm not sure if any other elected members are actively using this train every single week. However, I am. Every Saturday I have to take my son up to Glasgow for music lessons. Yes, absolutely, I support the motion, and we do need full information. I would like to put the request that we highlight the issues around Bar Hill Station, because Bar Hill isn't specifically mentioned, and I do acknowledge that Bar Hill isn't within Dumfries and Galloway Council's area. However, it is the station that most serves the people of the Machars. I would say that actually the road, the A713, is actually in very good condition, and I'm able to drive from Newtonshire up to New Galloway on the A713. I actually went on the A714 up to Bar Hill over the Straighton Road, so there is access. However, I do acknowledge, I am fortunate enough that I have a car, so I'm able to get to Ayr, and in fact it's the same time for me to drive to Ayr as it would be to get the train from Bar Hill. So while I do acknowledge that I'm in a privileged position, that I have transport to be able to access Ayr Station, I do think that this feeling that people in the West are feeling completely left out, I don't feel is completely accurate. I think there are a proportion of people who feel that way, but that's not felt across the board. And certainly as someone who is actively using the train every single week, that's not my feeling on the matter. But I would just like to say thank you for bringing this to motion, and to ask my colleague, Councillor Wood, to stress the importance of Bar Hill Station, because I'm aware that there isn't a regular bus from Bar Hill, but people have to phone and book a taxi from that. So just with the Minister, if my councillor colleague could make that point, I'd be very pleased. Thank you.
Councillor Nicholson?
I don't use the train from there, but I've been in here and used the trains from there. Now, my information I've got, and maybe officers can help out here as well, and whether they have access to, there's many queries there about the hotel, about the stage, about the safety, and about timing. The hotel, as far as I'm aware, is owned by somebody that's away abroad somewhere, and the Air Council the officers there couldn't get a hold of them, and they raised concerns over a good number of years and tried to get access to the hotel, but they weren't allowed. They then brought in went through the courts or whatever it is, and they then got access to that, and once they got access to that and put scaffolding up, they then discovered more serious faults throughout the rest of the hotel, which leads towards the bridge. The bridge was then closed off to pedestrians and down the pathways leading up from the other side of the road. Now, I don't know, I think there's bound to be some kind of engineering solution to try and get some train on the track further on. I can understand now they put the buffers up before, so you only get 4 carriages, I think it is, up, whereas you used to get 6 and go through, so they've used all the carriages for, you go to Glasgow or wherever it might be, or Edinburgh. But the officers have access to all that engineering and building information regarding the safety, regarding the possibility of getting another train.
Chair, yes, that's certainly what the task force are looking at. It's very much within the gift of South Ayrshire Council and Transport Scotland and Network Rail at this time, but it's certainly what the task force is looking at to ensure that we can reduce the exclusion zone and therefore let train service get back on. And their main focus is to get service back south to Stranraer. But at this time, it's not possible. But hopefully by tomorrow's task force, we'll have more up-to-date information.
I think that's the point I was trying to make. Is it, would the bridge fall down, or would the building fall down onto the bridge if there was a train or that going through there? I don't think so, but there's going to be some kind of solution there that's viable to get something through.
I am not privy to that information. It's within the building control team within South Ayrshire Council, so I wouldn't have that information available.
Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, my only fear would be, Ronnie, that the tree fell down that's growing through the roof. They've known about this for 14 years, and my understanding, maybe Gavin could confirm, but a request was asked if the council had received the structural engineer's report, and still we don't have that structural engineer's report, is my understanding. So we don't even know the full facts, and Douglas is going up there trying to represent us when we're not given the full facts, is my understanding of the situation. But turning to Bar Hill, Bar Hill's mentioned in the first bullet point. So we do recognise, and I've already spoken of that, as in terms of the connectivity for people in Newton Stewart and the Mackers through to Kirkcudbright. So it does recognise that we do need the line opened, and indeed the connectivity from Bar Hill maintained in that respect. So 14 years, we've had a lot of to and fro in those 14 years. I think we should be expecting the line, a train to be pushed through in some way, and for that to be maintained. And I'm sure, I hope Douglas will take that to the task force tomorrow, with hopefully the full support of this council.
Are we content with our consideration of the report? Councillor Wood had a recommendation. I don't know, there seemed to be a lot of support for the motion itself. I mean, do we want to include the report, the motion as in the recommendations? Yeah. Plus, we have a recommendation from Councillor Wood. Sorry.
No, if it's the will of the Chamber, I'm happy to go with the motion. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So we will include the terms of the motion as a recommendation. Thanks. And we're all content with that. I'm assuming everybody's content. Okay, can we move on to item 6, which is another notice of motion, which has been distributed this morning, so hopefully all members have had the chance to read it. I've accepted this as an urgent motion. Members will be aware of the grave concerns regarding the implementation of universal credit expressed recently, including by 2 former Prime Ministers. Members will also be aware of the recent announcement of the suspension of the rollout of universal credit and the calls for additional funding to be made available in the UK budget on 29th of October to alleviate the hardship caused to some recipients. Universal credit has already been implemented in Dumfries and Galloway, and some of our residents have already been financially disadvantaged, although this council has done what it can to try to mitigate those effects. If additional funding is made available to alleviate the financial hardship, it is the view of the administration that this must be retrospective in those areas where universal credit has already been implemented. It is the need to make this case in advance of the UK budget which, in my opinion, renders this motion urgent. Will members agree to withdraw delegation from the Communities Committee for discussion? To allow discussion. Thanks. Okay. So I invite Councillor Wilson to propose the motion.
Thank you, Leader, and I'd like to echo a number of the comments that you've made there. Some people will be worse off as a result of the introduction of universal credit, and those aren't my words, but the words of Work and Pension Secretary Esther McVeigh. Universal credit will see the legacy benefits of job seekers allowance, ESA, income support, tax credits and housing benefit brought together. I think it's important to emphasise that it's not only those who are seeking work that claim these benefits, but also those who have low wages, caring responsibilities and a variety of other personal circumstances. A number of reports and, more importantly, personal experiences that have came to light since the introduction of universal credit in some areas have shown the number of people who are financially worse off compared to the other legacy benefits. We have a problem here locally where in Dumfries and Galloway there will be claimants who under the previous system and under the new welfare system but have similar circumstances will receive 2 different levels of payments. And going forward, a number of these claimants who will move on to universal credit at some stage in the future will be financially worse off. We must remember that the people who will be financially worse off aren't the tabloid benefit sheet stereotype. It is lone parent households, households with disabled occupants, and those on tax credits, i.e. those who are in work or self-employed. They will be the ones that are financially worse off. They've been made financially worse off with the changes that have happened, but the changes that will continue to be implemented. As a council, we have an anti-poverty strategy which is making a vital difference on the ground to our communities. For those of us who attended the events organised as part of Challenge Poverty Week will have seen the first-hand difference being made by this council working in partnership with voluntary organisations. It is vital that we continue to implement our strategy and do the good work that we are doing, but if changes aren't made to universal credit, it will make it even more difficult to tackle poverty in this region. What my motion asks is that this council lobby to see changes to the welfare system to ensure that people in this region are not financially worse off as a result of the introduction of universal credit. I'm sure there are a number of different views about welfare, about benefits, and how we support the most vulnerable in our region. But unfortunately, we don't have the power to make the radical changes which I think are required, but we can seek to see changes to the system that is being imposed. In my motion, I've also said that we must do all we can to inform our local MPs of the damage being done locally as a result. After voting in the House of Commons not to release impact statements on universal credit, David Mundell said that he was satisfied with universal credit in his constituency. It appears that at least one of our local MPs is out of touch. The fact of the matter is that the austerity that the Conservative government are imposing on the welfare system and Department for Work and Pensions is the root cause of the fact that people are financially worse off with universal credit. That is why my motion also asks that we as a council lobby for the changes that we need to be made in the Chancellor's budget next week to ensure that no person is worse off as a result of universal credit and that appropriate support is available for all claimants. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you. I'm quite happy to second it. I won't do a big speech. I've had people from North West Dumfries who've been affected by this, I was going to call it a tax, but it's no, it's an attack on the most vulnerable in our communities. I've had a young mother who is suicidal, without hot food, in rent arrears, people within rent arrears, people with mental health difficulties. They put their children first, but still the children suffer, and it's all because of this. Sorry, I'm getting a bit with it. But one of the things I was going to say as well is that, you know, Gail, who's away just now, I think on a national level, it is recognised that this can't go on the way it is. COSLA, who represents all of the councils in Scotland, it's clear that, you know, that many issues remain in the delivery of universal credit, and it remains their view that local authorities are vital strategic partners for DWP support and claimants going forward. They are deeply unhappy with the way that they're being treated. Local government is not just another stakeholder, they are a key strategic partnership, and I think recognition from the government regarding this will go a long way to try and ease some of the burden on families. So I'm quite happy second the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Dryburgh.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have been very supportive of a local charity called New Start Recycle in Annan, and they have 8 volunteers volunteered by the DWP to support New Start Recycle. 8 of them have learning difficulties. Every one of them have been put on to universal credit. Every one of them has been disadvantaged with less money to them. And that includes a young man who has had 2 strokes when he was 18, and another man who actually had to starve himself and collapsed because he couldn't feed himself and heat his house. David Mundell visited that last week and was confronted by the 8 young people who were in that particular organisation, and yet he thinks that universal credit is actually working. I'm fully supportive of this motion, Chair, and I think anybody who isn't should hang their head in shame because of the things that are happening across this region to those that are less advantaged than others.
Thank you. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, I speak in support of the motion. And, you know, last week I dealt with 4 cases where people were seriously affected. One was receiving £300, that's higher than what the figure is here quoted in the motion, £300 less under universal credit than she did on income support and all the other benefits. I dealt with another lady that had been sanctioned, who has been off work for a full year and longer, and she'd been sanctioned for 3 months and received £5, not £5 per week, £5 to live on for that 3 months. She now is in serious debt, having taken out a first loan and then an added loan, try and live. There were 2 cases. As I say, I dealt with 4 and still dealing with those. But it's interesting, you know, and maybe to ask Adam in terms of both 4 and 5, where it says, agrees that no person in Dumfries and Galloway should be financially worse off as a result of the introduction of universal credit. And in 5 it said, made so that no claimant is in financial worse off. Well, there's 2 that are financially worse off. I take it when we adopt this motion today, these claimants will be reimbursed through the council, if I'm reading this correctly, that there'll be no worse off, and indeed any other claimant that is worse off, because that's what the motion's saying. I totally and fully support that, and that we make good that. So be it, then we may have to get it reimbursed from government, but we don't see anyone worse off. Indeed, I'm trying to find the email that members of Ward 1 and Ward 2 received only a few hours ago. The person who wrote it happens to live in Glenluce, So it's out with Ward 1, but that's another claimant, I believe, who is suffering under universal credit. So my question is, the motion, which I totally support, then I take it that we're going to reimburse as a council and then seek retribution somewhere from government where the shame should be. I take it that's what it means. Personally, and I heard Adam talk about radical views, I would prefer the motion to say scrap universal credit forthwith and to put that to the government.
Councillor Blake.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader. The Councillor Scobie's last comments, I think they maybe deserve an answer first before I go into to my suggestions.
Councillor Wilson, do you want to answer?
Myself and Councillor Scobie do share that we are completely idealists. The motion states that agreed to delegate to Leader to write to the Chancellor of the Exchequer and Secretary of State for Work and Pensions to raise the concerns of this Council on universal credit implementation, both for current claimants and future claimants. I think that while it would be extremely nice for the Council to actually go through, we have to remember that this is a Department of Work and Pensions scheme. It is a UK government scheme. I don't think there's a method in which the Council could actually reimburse and then claim the money back. As much as I would certainly love to do it, I'm not aware of a method in which the Council could actually do that.
Okay, Councillor Blake.
Thank you for that, Leader. I thought it was important to get that clarification, and thank you for Councillor Wilson for that. We in the Conservative group, we recognise that there have been significant issues with the rollout of universal credit, but unfortunately we feel that the motion as it's presented today puts forward a rather imbalanced view. And the motion makes a statement that the introduction of universal credit results in a number of claimants being financially worse off. Well, that's correct. It makes absolutely no recognition that many claimants would in fact be better off. It also proposes that no claimant should be financially worse off. This would be totally unworkable and inappropriate, as there may very well be cases identified where the claimants are being paid above the level that they're actually entitled to. The motion also states that there's an opportunity for the UK government to make significant changes to the policy, but does not recognise that the Secretary of Work and Pensions has already stated that this will be addressed in the forthcoming budget. It's understood that some of the benefits will be paid for an additional 2 weeks after an application has been made to universal credit. Full details of that are still to be announced, but I also understand, and I may be incorrect in understanding it, that money will not be reclaimed, it will just be paid. The proposal that leadership of the Council should be given the remit to write to the Chancellor, again asking for that no claimant is financially worse off, is again totally inappropriate for the reasons I've already given. In essence, we feel that the motion presented is imbalanced, and I would like to propose the following amendment. The amendment is: the Dumfries and Galloway Council recognises that while there will be claimants who will be financially better off with the implementation of universal credit, there will be instances where claimants are worse off. 2, Dumfries and Galloway Council should relate to the Council's anti-poverty strategy when considering cases where applicants are suffering financial hardships caused by the introduction of universal credit in order to limit any difficulties being experienced. 3, Dumfries and Galloway Council welcomes a statement made by the Secretary of Work and Pensions that steps will be taken to ease the difficulty experienced by some claimants during the transition period in the forthcoming budget. And 4, Dumfries and Galloway Council agrees to delegate to the Leader to write to the Chancellor of Exchequer, raising the concerns that some claimants are experiencing difficulty during the transition period and requesting that steps be taken to ensure that the implementation of universal credit is fair, causes as little financial hardship as possible, while still encouraging and rewarding people for getting back into work. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Right.
Sorry, Leader, I have copies of that.
And do you have a seconder for your amendment? Councillor Carruthers. Okay, Councillor Hagman. Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Leader. And similarly to the previous motion that we were discussing, I am directly going to be affected by this. I have been told, and the information I've been read is, I am going to be financially worse off with the rollout of universal credits. However, just to move the debate forward, really, do we have any data from the officers? Do the officers have any data to support the claims made by my fellow councillor that we're going to have people better off as a result of the rollout of universal credit? How many people are going to be in that position? Because certainly, as far as I'm aware, I am going to be worse off. It would be wonderful if the council could actually reimburse the money that I'm going to be worse off, although I think I might have to declare an interest on that one and have to leave the chamber for that. But it would be useful to actually have the data. Unfortunately, I'm not on communities, so I've not been able to raise this previously, but I would welcome the fact that we're now having an opportunity to discuss this, because while I'm hoping I'm not going to be financially worse off to the point that I will be in financial difficulties and have to be applying for loans to finance my life and be able to attend my work, i.e. coming here, it would be really useful to actually have the data on that. So do officers have any factual data of how many people are going to be in a better off position, as claimed by my colleague?
Hi, sorry, still in the back row. It's very difficult to tell within Dumfries and Galloway with the data we hold who will be better off and who will be worse off. But when customers come to transition to universal credit, we have some officers who can assist them with ensuring that their ultimate claim and the reward is put in place successfully. Individual circumstances dictate the future award of universal credit, and there's no way we can model that across the whole region currently. I do know that people who are in work are better off under universal credit up to a certain point.
Councillor John Campbell.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, just having a quick look at this and listen to Councillor Blake. The amendment, it's nice of the Tory councillors in here to pass the buck to the council when this is clearly a matter of Westminster, and yet they want us to sort out their mess, their problem, with the council using anti-poverty applications. I mean, it's beyond belief just reading this. If they have an issue down in Westminster, they really need to get on top of it and sort it out down there. It's not the council's job to look after the mess that they've created.
Further contributions? Councillor Maitland.
Thank you to my colleagues for producing their paper basis of the amendment. Thank you indeed. We support the principle of universal credit. Words not mine, nor indeed any of my group, but actually the words of the Labour Shadow Secretary of State in 2014. And so I want to say to people that we really ought not to be thinking about throwing the baby out with the bathwater in this particular instance. I recognise very clearly that there are problems with this. We should be thinking about giving money to the main carer, and we must keep the tapers and make absolutely certain that work pays. But at the moment, there are problems. I do accept that. I looked at the notice of motion here and wondered whether, in fact, I'd be able to support it if we simply put at the